dealing with? Well, Shimano Tourney, 7-speed, folding pedals, 13 ampere 48 volt battery. So here we've got a nice solid gooseneck sitting into the frame with a quill, and then we come down the suspension fork at the front, which is lockable, down to mechanical brakes on 160 rotors, and the same goes for the rear. We're looking at mechanical brakes on 160 rotors. Nice folding clasp, front headlight, rear light is built into the battery pack. If you haven't got the battery rack fitted, it comes with a similar rack, nice and solid. Nice, reasonably comfortable saddle. That's what we're dealing with on the handlebars. Nice grips. Yoli monochrome display. Control buttons there. 7-speed tombstone there. And your throttle. I want to talk about a couple of things. That rack bag is pretty cool, and it comes as a set now, and it's a pretty cool set, and it includes a bike cover. Well, I'll put the link in at the end for that. As you can see, there's loads of space in there. I can get my drone pack in there, and if we come over to here, you can see that there's loads of space, and that all pulls out. I keep tools in it. It's alright, it's cracking, but the set's worth having. It really is worth having. I always thought, oh, they'd be a bit cheap and nasty, but they're not. They're quality kit. And the other thing I want to talk about is the battery and the rack, because it means I can keep my pannier bag on the side the way it all works. It's a good little system, because the way I've modified them before, I've not really had that chance to think forward and think, when am I going to put a pannier bag on it? And Engwe have done that, and I like that. I really do like that. But it's also about having that extra 13 amperes of range, and I used to think that you could get away with 30 to 35 would be ideal, but I'm easily going to get on past 50 miles out of this. So I'm not really putting a lot of work in, but if you go down to past 4, 60 miles, past 3, between past 2 and past 3 when you're on the flat, you can be into 70 miles range on this. They're really good little range monsters, and I like it. I think they're a cracking bit of kit. I think I got it wrong when I was putting 50 amperes of batteries on bikes, because you're constantly fighting the weight too. So we're at the bottom of the 112 foot hill climb. Look at it. I used to have a TT this colour, orange and black. Post a pic of it now. Have a look at that. So I'm kind of fond of this already. So riding it over, there's a bit of difference with the rear suspension because there isn't any. But I'm loaded up with the second battery. Just giving me 26 amperes, 48 volts of range. So yeah, what do you think? Let's get on with the hill climb. And they're off. As you all know, it's 112 foot, over a third of a mile hill climb. Having ridden over here on this is going to have no problems whatsoever. It's a bit lighter than the X, obviously because it's not carrying that suspension. And as you all know, what I say is, if an e-bike can't make it up this hill, it's not worth having. And at the moment, it's doing fabulously. You know, I'm putting very little pedal work into this. It's not the fastest climb, but it doesn't need to be. It just needs to get up the hill without any real effort. I don't know if you saw my X26 video a couple of weeks back or a week or so ago, but that flew up here. Absolutely no problems getting up here. So this is legally locked. It has top speed of 15.5 mile an hour, 4 mile an hour throttle. Again, the usual problem with the throttle is there's just no torque to that 4 mile an hour. So it's basically walk mode. But you don't need it. You really don't need it. I love the colour of it. Oh. Right, let's get up into town. See what this thing's like round town. I'll tell you what, so far I've done 8.3 miles on it. I haven't really missed the mid suspension, but it could do with a suspension seat post. I'll go over the occasional bump and then sort of like feel it, whereas I wouldn't feel it if I was on the mid suspension frame, like on the X and the Pro 2.0. But if I never had it, I'd never miss it, if that makes sense. It's not something that buys and sells the bike to me. This one seems to be a little more nimble than, like I said, the X or the Pro. But we're not talking by massive amounts, but you can feel it. Yeah, it does feel nice. I'll tell you what's missing. It's really quiet. And you do get a bit of rattle noise with the bikes with, and I'm not talking a lot. You have to go over a fair sized bump to get it. But you do get the old clunk now and again. With this, there's nothing to clunk. Like I said, suspension seat post will sort out all the sort of thing if you need mid suspension. I'd definitely buy a suspension seat. Definitely. So let's see what it's like around town. So far this has been fine. It's like I said, it's a little bit different to what I'd normally ride because I kind of got used to having mid suspension, but like I said, it's not a major selling point on one of these bikes that if you haven't had it, you don't miss it. Something else that you hear me say a lot about having good manners. It's nimble. In fact, it's a bit overly nimble sometimes, but not so much you'd be worried about it. Meant to be sunny all day today, so you can tell it's going to rain. Yeah, that's good town manners. It's fine around town. I can imagine if I went into Leeds, it would be equally well mannered around Leeds. Do like the colour. I've spoken to about 3 people this morning that like the bike. mainly because I like the colour. So let's talk about the importance of these rack batteries and if they're good value for money. I think there's a discount code on them anyway, but if you have if you buy anything off of any of the channels with discount codes, I think the discount code works on that as well. Are they good value for money? Well, of course they are. This doubles the range of your e-bike. And if you just want an e-bike to go to the shops or just pot around, you don't need one. But if you want to go on days out with it, you need a rack battery. You need to know that you're not going to get range anxiety. And if you've got a rack battery on, you can get rid of your range anxiety. It kills range anxiety, that's what it does. And in that, you've got yourself, monster range really. I mean, who's going to go out and ride? To be honest, the X I could have probably got 70, 80 miles range out of that with the two batteries on, because I'm not burning batteries, I'm not decimating batteries, because I'm not going fast. I'm going the legal limit. So one of the things you get if you get one of these bikes, it's legal and it's locked, EU, you don't get confiscation anxiety and you don't get range anxiety if you've got the rack battery on. I think I've been putting rack batteries on bikes for over a year. And let's be honest, well, actually 4. Because my first e-bike I put a rack battery on. And what did that do? Well, when you've got a bike that's got range with that one, it was a Rad Rhino. And I increased the range up to barely pedaling past 60, 70 miles. And the fun I had with that bike, absolutely great fun bike. And it was the bike that got me into e-bikes. I used to think you needed sort of like 50 amp hours of range to get, when I built my initial Engine X up with a rack battery, it was 50 amp hours and, over 100 miles of range. But who does that? Who does that range? That's what you have to think about. Who does that range? Because I couldn't do it all in one day. And when I did the mental health benefits of e-bikes video, I was out all day, 58 miles. And I got home, I could barely get off the bike. I've now got a suspension seat post on that bike, but you see my point? You're never going to do these massive ranges. But it's not going to be impossible to go out and do 40 miles in a day. And you'd be lucky to get 40 miles range out of a single battery if you're my weight. You're going to be putting a lot of effort in. But if you don't want to put any effort in, just get a rack battery. So what's it like on the grass? Well, yeah, absolutely fine. Exactly what you want. For some unknown reason it feels a bit nippier than dual suspension bikes, but that's probably down to it being lighter, no doubt. let's go climb some hills. So we're going to start off with the hill just down here on the right, and then we're going to do the bypass run. So we've been up this hill before. I like to test it on this hill. It's a bit of a bendy hill. So having no problems getting up here. Throw it into the gear. It's got a chill this morning, and this has been in the garage overnight, so it's probably not done it any favours because the batteries are freezing, so that's going to reduce range. But I'm good for range because I've got my rack battery turned on. Which is a cracking thing. Yep, no problem there. One thing this controller does, it does transfer how bad the battery sag is to the display. And it's sort of like, I keep going down to 3 bars, but you know, I'm on 18.5 miles now, and then back up to 4. Well, no doubt with the dual batteries on, this will do, because I'm basically most of the time in level 5. I'm not at the moment, so I don't need it. But yeah, it's, you know, most of the time I'm in past 5 at the moment. I don't need it, so I'm not using it. I'm on the flat. But as soon as I hit a hill, so I need to check it out in different pass modes. Not to the extent that some reviewers do, because it's a bit pointless. Your range, my range are going to be totally different. So come on then, let's do the bypass run. Last Saturday, just as I get to the lights, somebody went into the back of my car along here. Minimal damage, so apparently he was taking a picture of my number plate because he watched the film Castaway the night before. Honestly, 3 points there for driving and playing with your phone at the same time. So what's it like? Well, like I said, it feels more nimble than the mid-suspension bikes, and I think that's because when it's more rigid and it's slightly lighter, I can see why people love these. And like I said, if you've never had mid-suspension on the bike before, you're not going to miss it because you've not experienced it. So this has benefits and negatives as to the mid-suspension e-bikes like the X and the Pro and the Pro 2.0. This is where somebody went into the back of me on Saturday. It was a big cheers for that. Thank you. So it just proves another point that you need to be careful out here. Get some mirrors, get an helmet. As you saw in my video of the X26 when I accidentally fell off the bike of my own accord. If I hadn't had an helmet on when I went into that pickup wheel, I'd have been out cold. Maybe worse. There's a lot to like about this bike. I actually I like it because, yeah, the rigid structure of it just doesn't feel it's flexible. Because you feel a bit of flex in the X, you can feel a bit of flex in the Pro models because of that mid suspension. You don't feel it in this, and like I said, it feels slightly more nimble because of it. It's hard not to be impressed with it. But one of the things I'm not impressed with, I'm pulling the brakes on fully hard right now, and look at me not stopping. The brakes, as usual, being mechanical, are absolutely dog shit. And they don't belong on this bike. I'm hoping Engwe starts listening, because it shouldn't be down to the customer to have to swap the brakes out. They should be given the choice, or more to the point, they shouldn't be given a choice. These should be hydraulic from the offset. Again, look, I'm struggling to brake. What hydraulic brakes give you is a more linear braking, clamping on both sides properly, equally, of the rotor at the same time. So as I keep pointing out to people that say, oh, mechanical brakes are fine, they're not fine. I've seen other reviewers, in fact, Matt on Tail Happy TV will just say, oh, they're perfectly fine for this bike. And I think he did it with one of the Engwe ones, and they're not perfectly fine. Matt lives in LA where mostly everywhere is flat. And apart from the California incline climb that he does, he rarely goes uphill anywhere, especially on a bike of this power. So we're coming up to the bendy hill, the one I don't like. Sometimes on the hills that I've tried this on, the little 18 amp controller, it does feel a little bit overwhelmed. And it doesn't necessarily struggle, because it doesn't struggle, but you can, well actually it does struggle. It gets you there. But I'm kind of wondering at what cost, because I can imagine that controller getting quite hot, if that makes sense. If not hot, warm. But yeah, it's getting up here fine. Might clunk it up a bit. Yeah, I'm not winning any land speed records. But yeah, I'm not out of breath either. Not any burn in my legs really. It's just like riding a normal bike on the flat. You know, the X version I did last week seemed to be a bit more compliant in that way, but well, it's done it. but I don't think it liked it. Squeaky brakes, even though I bedded them in. So if you don't know how to bed the brakes in, you want to do a run round where you live on the flat. Do about 20 to 30 gradual stops. And this beds the brake pads into the rotor. You should always try and do that, because one of the things it does is gets rid of that squeaking. So let's get back into town. Let's go have a look. Well, 23 miles, I've gone down to 3 bars, but I reckon if I turn it back on, I'm going to be back at 4 bars. So 23.5 miles, come to 24 miles. I weigh 240 pounds with my pack on. You can see where this is going, the usual stuff. So let's check out the tyres. We know what they are, we use them all the time, so I'm saying don't know what the grip's going to be like because the bike's lighter. Yeah, no problem. Brakes on the other hand. So you've seen me come up and down this hill enough times to know it's quite a steep hill and nothing first gear, and I'm just turning my legs and it's getting up here easily. With the twin batteries on with my weight on, the way I ride it, you know, past 5 pretty much all the time. 50 miles, knock it down to 3, past 3, 60 to 70 miles. The thing is, I'm constantly trying to kill the batteries, you see. Yeah, this 18 amp controller feels a little bit overwhelmed at times. But it's like anything else, you sort of get used to it. And within that, you can sort of, yeah, you kind of get used to it. Yeah, it's definitely a round town bike. And as you can see with the storage you can get on it, it does its job really well. Another pannier on this and the other bag, and you know, we go do a bit of shopping. So side panels pull out to produce small bags. They're fabulous. It's not the cheapest, but quite good quality. It was a nice one to send it to me, really. And the kit comes with that bag. Comes with a phone holder. It comes with a bike cover, and it comes with a lock. I'll put a link to it in the description. So what you're getting, I think you're getting quite good value. And my opinion on locks now has changed a lot due to the fact that, let's be honest, what are you going to lock them to? very loved bike, the EP2 Pro. And I know a lot of you lot absolutely love this bike. So when Engwe asked me what bike I wanted next, I wanted this, and I wanted the L20 that's currently in the garage waiting to get built. Just because it's so loved, and I wanted to know why. And yeah, the EP2 Pro, a lighter, nimbler version of basically the Engwe Engine X, but without the mid suspension. It's pretty much the same bike. So why was it more nimble? Well, that mid suspension, when it's taken out the equation, makes the bike stiffer, and for that it makes it a little bit more nimble. I quite enjoyed that. I quite enjoyed riding around on it. It just felt lighter, and it is lighter, not by much, but it is lighter. And I kind of felt that as I was riding it around. It's for somebody who's ridden just full suspension bikes for so long, it just felt different. It just felt more nimble. You can definitely feel no flex in that bike. So let's get down to the pros of this bike. Well, let's start with the price. It's reasonably cheap. It's cheaper than the X and any of the full suspension bikes. Like I said in the video, if you've ever ridden a bike with mid suspension, you'd miss having the mid suspension. But if you've never had mid suspension, you're not going to miss it. You don't know what the experience is like. So yeah, I didn't mind the mid suspension missing it all. And to be honest, if you bought a suspension seat post, it would be far better than sort of the mid suspension that turns up on the bikes anyway. And in that, you can get yourself a nice suspension seat post and you're away. The 7-speed Shimano Tony, tried and tested, works fine every time. I've never had to, well, I've only once had to adjust one, and it's probably down to cable stretch. So yeah, the gears are good, they're fine. I still don't like that Tombstone gear changer. In fact, I positively hate it. And in the case of this bike, which we're aiming to get some range out of it, could have done with an 8-speed, but it's fine. What else is fine? Well, the Chaoyang tyres are fine, the chain's fine, the front suspension's fine, the gooseneck's fine. I have found that they have upgraded the gooseneck. It's far better than the ones that we were getting on the original bikes. I meant to note that before on these reviews, that, you know, I think I already have. It's definitely a better design, and it's more sturdy. Yeah, the rack's fine, and the rack you'll get's fine. The range, battery, and all how it works, it's easy to install, and it's fine. It's all you need. That Suto 750 watt motor is fine. It was an actual sort of breath of fresh air riding it round because of how nimble it was, and you know, it was just a fine bike. But the main draw to this bike, and I had loads of people come up to me and want to talk about it, was the colour. And I love that colour. That orange with the black accents. Really liked it. Right down to the mud guards with the go faster black stripe going through them. I really like that. So yeah, it's a bike that sort of captures the imagination. It's a really good looking bike. In fact, one of the best looking bikes I've ridden. But I'm biased with a bit of orange because, like I said, I used to own a bright orange and black TT, and it was one of my favourite cars. So maybe I'm just reminiscing of the old days. I've always liked the wheels. I do like these alloy wheels. I think they look good. I know they add weight to the bike. So if you're a range monster like me, they're sort of a negative, but you can't go wrong with the look of these wheels, especially on a bright orange bike with black accents. It really works well. Let's get down to the negatives, and there's a few. And you kept hearing me say the word fine through all the positives, and there's nothing massively brilliant about the bike. It's just fine. As a package, it's pretty, well, as a package, it's more than fine. But the parts that it's made up of and how it sort of goes together, it's fine. When it's all put together, it's a really good bike. But those brakes are dog shit. They really are. They don't belong on these bikes at all. And if you've never ridden an e-bike before, yeah, it's something you get used to. But having used hydraulics on virtually every bike I've owned, well, every bike I've owned, you really need to understand the difference between mechanical brakes and hydraulic brakes and how they work. And hydraulic are 3 or 4 times better than normal mechanical brakes. And as much as I keep saying it, mechanical brakes do not belong on an e-bike over 20 kilos. So you can argue the fact that, oh, well, you weigh this. You're stopping the rolling mass of the wheels and the tyres when you're riding an e-bike. You're not actually, the physics of it is you're stopping the rolling mass of the wheel. And while weight adds a little bit to that equation, it's the rolling mass of that wheel you're stopping. And if the brakes are crap, which these are, you're not going to have the proper stopping distances you really need when you're out riding this bike. Like I said, as you see in the video, they were really bad. And it's one of the negatives about this bike, that it should have had hydraulic brakes from the factory, and it didn't. I haven't owned an e-bike before, and this is your first e-bike, and let me get this straight, it's a really good first e-bike, especially for the money. But if you've never had mid-suspension or a suspension seat post on a bike, you miss that straight away. I went off a curb and I actually forgot that I was actually on a stiff platform instead of anything with suspension on it, and that rubbed a bit. So yeah, you need to understand that this is great, but a mid-suspension bike, comfort-wise, is a different animal altogether. But like I said, all of this can be taken away with a decent suspension seat post. That throttle's useless. You might as well take it off, unless you need it for walk assist. But I always say that if the police are looking for an illegal e-bike, they'll look for something with a throttle. And it's a waste of your time and a waste of their time for them to come over and test that it's 4 miles an hour, blah, blah, blah. But it's just a police magnet having a throttle on your bike nowadays, so it's easier just to take it off. For the 4 miles an hour, it gives you 0 torque. It's not actually pulling you when you're pulling away. Well, it didn't pull me. I just sat there with the throttle on and nothing moved. So and that was on the flat, so you can imagine what that's like on a hill. There's just no torque whatsoever. And ideally that 4 miles an hour has to have some torque with it to get the bike going. It just doesn't. And if you're on a hill, you might as well just pull it off and throw it away. So let's get back to a few things that are sort of middle of the road with me, which they're neither bad nor good, or they're sort of good. The display is fine. I like the display, it's monochrome, but it just gives you all the information you need. And Yolin make really good displays, and they always have done, and they're reliable, so they rarely go wrong. You might go on the forums and, oh, they sent me out a new display. Nothing's perfect, and to be fair, you can get these displays overnight if you don't want to wait for the Chinese post to get to you. You can get them virtually overnight from Amazon. So yeah, I like the display, and I like the fact that it's a common display and it's easy to replace. Lights do the job. I live in a town that's virtually lit up everywhere, so the lights really aren't a problem for me. They're just about legality. But I do take my own bikes away to different areas that have no light at night, and that's why I have different lights on my own bikes. I've always liked the grips on these, the shape of them. Then you can lock them down so they don't move or twist with you. The pound rest style of them I really like. If you're riding long distances, they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So they're a little bit more than middle of the road. They're actually very good. The 18 amp controller, it does the job. It's middle of the road. But as you saw in the video, going up some of the steeper hills, although it got me up there, I could feel it struggling. And I could feel it struggling quite a bit. And it could probably done with a 20 amp controller in there. You know, it takes the budget up a bit, but 20 amps, it's not a lot, is it? And this goes down to the brakes thing as well. It's just the economics of the bike. The bike has an economic cost, build cost, and they need to make a profit, but they also need to make the bike affordable. And I think I've mentioned before on some of my other videos about the fact that people will not buy a bike because it's £10 too much, or it doesn't fall into a £999 bracket. If it's slightly over, people won't buy it. It's that going from 3 digits to 4 digits thing, and the psychological thing, you're going, oh, it's £1,001 and not £999. People won't buy it just because they see 4 digits. This is where the bike gets a lot of its compromises, that it's about budgetary constraints. Car manufacturers do it all the time. You'll buy a decent middle of the road car and it's plasticky, it's scratchy plastic everywhere on the interior, and the seats are pleather, and yeah, it's that thing altogether. What you have to look at is they're using the same economic structures to make these bikes, as the same as the car industries have done for decades. And you have to understand this is how they work out the cost of a bike for you. They need to get you in that position where you look at it and go, oh yeah, that's a bargain. But when you look deeper, it's a middle of the road bargain. You end up swapping bits out, like the brakes. And I know I keep going on about them, but those brakes need swapping out virtually immediately for hydraulics. So let's get to the last bit. Is that range battery good value for money? Well, you can look on AliExpress and you can get really big sort of 25 ampere batteries that cost the same. You can even get them with the racks. But the racks never really do the job. You end up having to adjust a load of stuff, or you end up just buying the battery and adapting it to the existing rack, and then you've got to buy a blender, and all these things are added into the cost. And this is just plug and play. I had a few problems getting everything in this time because it was just spaghetti junction in there, but it goes in. You just need to make sure that you're not too worried about moving wires around, but it goes in, and it's like I said, it was that, and I had a problem with the rear brake, which took the usual build time up a little bit, but I kind of expected that. So what does the battery do to the range? Well, you're jumping up to 1248 watt hours, you're 26 amperes of range. And I've said it more than once that I got it wrong with doing 50 ampere range battery packs on mine, and it's just like, it doesn't get you much more range than the 26 ampere because of the weight you're carrying. And it goes back down to that rolling mass. So I think they've done the math well here. And past 5 all day long, I get 50 miles out of this bike. Probably the only time that I actually went down to past 3 was just to try it out. I tried all the passes, but most of the time I was in past 5. And turned up again this morning, 35 miles in, and I'm three battery bars. So it's going to be 50 miles, more than 50 miles on past 5. If you're going to past 4 for your ride, you're going to gain sort of like another 10-15%. So you're into about 57 miles past 3. You're into 65, 70 miles if you dodge around between 3 and 2. So yeah, it absolutely screams good value for money. And they've always got a discount code on for them. You want to go out on adventures? I won't rely on 13 amperes. You really, really want some extra range on this, especially if you're an heavier dude like me. I highly recommend the rack battery. It's a really good bit of kit. Really well thought out. And as you can see, I didn't think forward when I was doing mine. So the plate that I added to my racks was flat and covered up the part where I'd need to actually put a pannier bag on. This has all been thought out. I could put my pannier bag on the side, or both sides I can run pannier bags. And again, they sent me that bag out. Let's talk about that little bag. So that bag came as a kit. And with that, you get the bag, you get a rain cover for the bike, you get a lock, and you get a phone holder. I'll be using the phone holder at a later date. And it's good value for money. The rain cover has a reflective silver thing on the inside, so I'm guessing that in the winter in the garage will keep any of the real frost off the bike or the real cold. I liked it. And I always thought these bags looked cheap, but they're not. They're actually really well made. As a kit, OEM stuff, I really liked it. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, cheap Chinese shit just to appease my followers. It's actually good. And for 99 quid, which is what they've got them on the website for, represents actually quite good value, especially when you realise you're getting a rain cover for the bike. So yeah, I liked it. So I suppose I'm going to have to give the bike a score. So I thought about this most of last night and again this morning before I filmed this for editing. And the actual bike itself, I'm going to give 9 out of 10. With the rack battery, I'm going to give it 9.2. If it had hydraulic brakes, I'd give it 9.4. So the kit you're watching now that I've been riding around on gets a 9.2 out of 10, which is quite an admirable score. And like I said, because of the range you're going to get from it, it's just all the bike you're ever really going to need. Unless you start getting into them, and then you're going to want mid suspension, faster, blah blah blah. But if you want legal, UK and EU legal, this is a brilliant little bike. So what's coming up next? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be reviewing the L20. Again, another really good bike by its followers. And I'm going to give that a nice ride round and take it down the canal and have a ride round and play with my drone, and we'll get to the bottom of what that bike is. I ordered the green one because everybody likes the green one, so I've gone with the green. Please share, like, subscribe. I do work hard on these videos. One of these videos takes me a couple of days to produce. In real time, it's actually sort of 16 hours work. So, and running a business at the same time, it's just, my bike's never about making money, it's always been about getting bums on seats. That said, if you want to buy one of these, do it through the link in my description. And it gives me a bung back to go buy some beers and just generally get pretty pissed now and again. It's very rare. And that's it for now. At some point I'll be doing a new video about UK e-bike law. You might want to keep an eye out for that. And the bike that I've asked for next off of Engwe might surprise you, because we're going back to have a look at something again. Have a nice weekend, everyone.